Thank you for coming. The assassination of President Kennedy had a profound impact on America in 1963 and the past 50 years. Last year was actually the 50th anniversary of his assassination, November 22nd, and through the past 50 years, we've seen a lot change. After President Kennedy was assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn into office. He was the vice president at the time of the assassination and was sworn in as the 36th president of the United States. Soon after he was sworn in as president, he signed into legislation many civil rights laws. And through the 60s, the 70s, and up through today, we have a lot going on in government in America with civil rights. So that's one major impact that the assassination of President Kennedy brought to America. I say that because had President Kennedy not been assassinated, not been shot and killed, who knows what would have happened with civil rights at the time, and who knows where we would be now. Of course, we can't go back and rewrite history, but we can think what would have been, what might have been, what might have happened. Also, with the assassination of President Kennedy came gun control laws. We had gone through a few assassinations of high political person that held high political offices, but up until the assassination of President Kennedy, it was not as profound. With his assassination followed the assassination of his brother, the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., a civil rights leader, and attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. Today, one of the main topics is for political issues is gun control laws. So who knows where that would have, where we would be with that today had President Kennedy not been assassinated. For this speech, I interviewed my mom. She was born in 1949, so when President Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, she was a 14-year-old ninth grader at Durham High School. She recalls the day that it happened. Very interesting, as I spoke with her, I felt like I was there. I could feel the emotion. Back in the time when President Kennedy was assassinated, the president was very, very, very well respected. He was looked up to. Today we don't see that. Today we don't have that. And it's very sad. It's just to see the change in America over the past 50 years. She recalled being in gym class at the time. The principal came over the loudspeaker and told all the students that President Kennedy had been shot. They were asked to go to their final classroom for the day. They proceeded. I don't know which class my mother had next, but she said she got into class and all the students were asked to lay their heads down on their desk. Over the loudspeaker, they played the radio news, and it was then announced officially that President Kennedy had been assassinated, shot and killed. My mother just said that everyone was crying. Everybody was just really heartbroken, really sad, really upset because violence was not as profound then as it is now. She said they got on the bus, went home, and as they were going home, people were pulling their cars over on the side of the road. People would get out of their cars, were standing, hugging each other, crying. People were driving with their lights on. And my mother said that this day and age, cars come automatically. You turn the car on and the car runs with its lights automatically. In that time, it was a sign of respect. Just again, a major difference in that time period with the death of a very important person in America, and the difference in then and today. We don't see that today. So basically what happened, President Kennedy was, he started the morning in Fort Worth, Texas. He was staying at a hotel. He was in Texas to try to rouse the Democratic Party. He was a Democratic president, and in Texas, the Democratic Party was not very happy at the time. So he was there to try to arouse them and just get the spirits and energy up of the Democrats. He left the hotel that he was staying at. He checked out at 8:45 a.m. and he immediately gave a speech in the parking lot. He then went to a breakfast at the Chamber of Commerce. Mrs. Kennedy rarely traveled with the president. She just happened to be with him on this trip. It was one of the first trips that she went on with him. She was running late that morning, so she joined President Kennedy at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, and he immediately called her out in a loving, joking way when she arrived about her being late. And from there, after breakfast, they left. They went to the airport, caught an airplane, took an 8-minute flight to Dallas. They landed at Love Field Airport. They shook hands, just greeted fans, people enthusiastic to see the president in their town. They did that for about 10 minutes and then proceeded to, President Kennedy got into the limousine, the topless limousine, where he was later shot and killed. He was advised by his Secret Service not to ride in a convertible. He wanted to, and so that's what he did. And they started on was supposed to be about a 10-mile drive through downtown Dallas. They were going about 25 miles an hour approximately. As they approached the 3-street underpass where 3 different streets came together, they went by the book depository, and a couple of shots rang out. President Kennedy was hit. The reports are controversial from the research that I've done. There's not sure how many shots were fired. He was hit in the head, a bullet going through the brain, which ultimately killed him. He was also struck in the throat just above the Adam's apple, which played a role in his death. There was a governor sitting in the front of the car who was also shot. He was not killed, however, he was critically injured. But from there, they rushed the president to the hospital, and he was, about 30 minutes later, he was pronounced dead. Interesting fact that Mrs. Kennedy did not leave his side from the time he was shot until they arrived back in Washington. One very sad fact is after they pronounced him dead and he was in the coffin getting ready to leave the hospital to fly back to Washington, she took off her wedding ring and placed it on his finger in the coffin and kissed him goodbye. She did stay by his side in the coffin, but that was her final goodbye to him. But once on the airplane, they took the coffin back to the Love Field Airport. And once on the airplane, Mrs. Kennedy stood by Lyndon B. Johnson as he was sworn in as president. They urged her to do that to show America that we were okay, that this was not going to deter us or take us down in any way. They flew back to Washington the next day. President Johnson announced that Monday the 25th would be a national day of mourning, and that happened to be the day that President Kennedy was put to rest. When interviewing my mother, I asked her when did this officially end, and she said, the day that he was buried is the day it ended, but it continues today. The questions, the thoughts on conspiracy theory, it all continues today. So I have some photos that I'd like to share. These are just photos of President Kennedy and his wife and their travel through the time of the assassination. This is where they landed at Dallas and greeted fans. This was a cover of Time magazine from where I got a lot of my information. In the car, that was right after he was shot. Secret Service is trying to get on the limousine to get Mrs. Kennedy, and you can see President Kennedy has been shot. Cover of the Washington Reporter on Friday. Another newspaper showing who had died. The swearing in of Lyndon B. Johnson. This is Jack Ruby shooting Lee Harvey Oswald. They believe Lee Harvey Oswald is the one who shot President Kennedy. And this was the funeral procession on Monday. And that is his son. And that is his wife, brothers, and children. And the cover of Life magazine. And this is the eternal flame that burns at Arlington Cemetery for President Kennedy. Also, I have a poster board over here with timeline and facts. This is a map of the route they were on that day. They came out of here as they got right in this area, approaching the 3 Street overpass, right by the grassy knoll. President Kennedy was shot. This is just a timeline of everything I've already discussed. When he was shot, when he was pronounced dead, the speech that morning that he gave, the flight from Fort Worth to Dallas, and their arrival back to Washington. And over here are just a few facts that I've shared with you. For instance, Mrs. Kennedy rarely traveled with the president. She wore her rose-colored suit the whole day, even though it was splattered with his blood. And then it was officially announced that President Kennedy died from a gunshot wound to the brain, and he had also been shot in the throat. So that is my speech. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.